Welcome, everyone. I'm Freda Reitzes, co-founder and creator of this conference, along with Betsy Grove, who you'll meet in a few minutes. Yesterday's presentations were filled with so much for us to think about and to learn and explore. And for those of you who were unable to join us, all is not lost, because all the keynotes and presentations are being recorded and will be available to you online from mid-March to July. When the videos are ready to be viewed, you'll receive a link about how to access them. So as we jump in for today, it is now my great pleasure to introduce Cecilia Traw, Dean of Bank Street's Graduate School. Cecilia will share a few words with you and then present the 2023 honoree, Deborah Meier.
So thank you, Freda. I think I'm not muted, am I? No. Good. Thank you, Freda. Welcome to the 2023 Kindergarten Conference. By being a participant in this conference, you are joining an institution that has been educating children and the adults who work with children and adolescents for over 100 years. We are a place with a deep philosophical roots and long educational traditions, and a place that works to keep those roots and the plant they support alive and responsive to the needs of schools and educators in 2023. In these extraordinarily challenging times, it is important to know that Bank Street has been and continues to be here for children, teachers, school teachers, and families. To help you ground in this conference and this institution, I'm going to read our credo, written by our founder, Lucy Sprague Mitchell. While written in the early 1950s, the credo expresses a set of values that guide us today. The document lives in the work we do together as educators and with students who are on their paths of becoming. It continues to define the spirit of imagination and critical inquiry that motivates our work and the work of this conference. The credo's guiding question is, what potentialities in human beings, children, teachers, and ourselves do we want to see develop? A zest for living that comes from taking in the world with all five senses alert. Lively intellectual curiosities that turn the world into an exciting laboratory and keep us ever a learner. Flexibility when confronted with change and the ability to relinquish patterns that no longer fit the present. The courage to work unafraid and efficiently in a world of new needs, new problems, and new ideas. Gentleness combined with justice in pursuing judgments. Sensitivity, not only to the external formal rights of the other fellow, but to him as another human being, seeking as a good life throughout his own standards. A striving to live democratically in and out of schools as the best way to advance our concept of democracy. Our credo demands ethical standards as well as scientific attitudes. Our work is based on the faith that human beings can improve the society they have created. Of these large ideas, it is the guiding question that stands out in the context of this conference. What potentialities in human beings should teachers ourselves do we want to see develop? If we are to center freedom, as the title of this conference asks us to do, we must maximize human potentials. A zest for living, lively intellectual curiosities and interests, courage to work unafraid, and willingness to strive to work democratically. Now turn to honoring a woman whose work in education began in the kindergarten classroom, Deborah Meier, and whose work is framed in these guiding ideas. What began as a way of using her morning hours, including half-day kindergarten while her children were in school, as well as adding to the household income, soon became the seeds for imagining what school can and should be for all children of all ages, no matter what their economic conditions. In her work in the kindergarten classroom, Deb found herself captivated by the powerful ideas of very young children and found that being in their company and in the company of other adults and families, growing mutual trust and respect for everyone, held the potential for how public education for all might engender and cultivate democracy and freedom. Deborah spent most of her life realizing her beliefs in children, public education, and democracy through political activity, more than 60 years in public education as an active parent, a public school teacher in Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York City, and an elected member of the New York City District 3 School Board. She was invited to open CPE1 in East Harlem with a group of teachers and community members as a staff-run school, and served as its director for 10 years. This school was the core of the small schools movement here in New York City, a contribution that makes New York City unique in urban public schools. The energy to create schools also led to the opening of Central Park East Secondary School in East Harlem and Mission Hill in Boston. I could go on to list Deb's many achievements, such as the receipt of the MacArthur Genius Award and the authorship of several books. But I think what is important for us to recognize this morning is that Deborah Meier's vision, her deep commitment to the imperative of public education being the bedrock and location for the valuing of all persons and the cultivation of democracy and democratic citizenry, grew out of her experience as a kindergarten teacher, her experience with the democratic and collective potential of children in their capacity to work with and play with each other. So, Deb Myers, we honor you today for all you have given to the world of schools and real education.
So, do I start?
You start.
So I'm thrilled to be here, and especially since this is a very special day for me. Yesterday, I became a great-grandmother for the first time. And it's a wonderful experience, and I hope you all live long enough to have the pleasure that I have today. And I'm going to have a second great-grandson next week. So this has been a wonderful period in my life. I think Cecilia has given a good picture of my background, and I thought I would tell you that a story about one or two of those experiences that made me a lifetime lover of kindergarten. Although, by the way, I'm sort of glad I'm not teaching kindergarten now, because I don't know what I would do about the latest mandates about the science of reading and other nonsense. So, but there I was teaching the kids about what the curriculum was supposed to be, teaching about what is living and what is not living. And all the children brought in some object, and we were supposed to decide whether that was living or non-living. But the first boy to present was carrying a rock, and that seemed pretty clear to me. But he said it was living. And we got into an argument, Daryl and I think he won the argument. At least the audience, the other 5-year-olds, seemed to be persuaded more by him than by me. And I then changed the subject for that morning while I could rethink what I was doing. And that night I called a friend of mine who worked at Rockefeller, a scientist. And when I told him the story, he said, well, Daryl is partly right. He's at the edge of modern science. And I was having such insights every day. I learned a lot about the world, about what it was like to be in another planet, and what it was like to see the world through fresh eyes from that kindergarten, plus just falling in love with the children and their families. But I would say that I don't know a lot about other kindergartens in Chicago, But when I was subbing, I was horrified. All that quality of play, which Cecilia so well described, has been squeezed out of schools in the low income, particularly low income Black neighborhoods. And the emphasis is on compliance, compliance, compliance. And that means the emphasis is also on adult compliance. Everybody is supposed to be slightly afraid of whoever is ahead of them. And that's hardly a recipe for democracy. I was, extraordinarily lucky, but there were a few bad moments, as there are in any classroom and any political battle. And we actually thought we were about to take over the world when Annenberg offered us $50 million in New York to start a zone based upon our ideas from kindergarten through 12th grade. And we got a new chancellor, whose name I won't mention, who said, no, we're happy to get the money, but I'm not giving away any power. And at that point, since I had already left my job in order to carry out this ambitious project, I decided to go to Boston and start another school. And I thought when I went to Boston that I could maybe go back to being a kindergarten teacher, because it was going to be a small school with a lot of official autonomy called pilot schools. And I thought under those circumstances, maybe I could be the school's principal and kindergarten teacher. It didn't happen, but I had another good 7 or 8 years in the midst of wonderful people. And that is part of what I treasure, was the school as a community in which every voice is heard and counts. So I thank you, Bank Street, for honoring me today. And in many ways, over the years, you have helped to educate me, along with a thank you to the 35 children that were my first kindergarten experience and shaped the rest of my life. Thank you.
Well, hi, I'm Betsy Grove, who you were introduced to earlier, but thank you so much. We're so happy to be able to honor you for the amazing work that you've done in the New York City school system. I've had a lot of student teachers in CPE1, and the experience they've had there is just magnificent. So thank you very, very much. And thank you, Cecilia, for your words as well.